Hi, I'm Josh Hawkins, and this is episode 86 of Opening Up the Gospels. In the last episode, I introduced the late Judean and Perean ministry, the 8 or 9 month period that begins in about August of 28 AD and ends in April of 29 AD, just before Jesus is crucified in Jerusalem. I talked about how this period is narrated exclusively by Luke and complemented by John's Gospel. Before we dive into Luke, though, I want to take a look at the final days that Jesus spends at Capernaum before embarking south to Perea. As we'll see, these days are important for the 12. We get a glimpse into what's happening in them and between them after their faith in Jesus has been severely tested and Jesus is predicted as suffering. Let's pick up in Mark's Gospel and read from Mark 9. They went on from there and passed through Galilee, and he did not want anyone to know, for he was teaching his disciples, saying to them, "The Son of Man is going to be delivered into the hands of men, and they will kill him. And when he is killed, after 3 days he will rise." But they did not understand this saying, and were afraid to ask him. And they came to Capernaum. And when he was in the house, he asked them, "What were you discussing on the way?" But they kept silent, for on the way they had argued with one another about who was the greatest. Just a short while before this, Jesus had taken Peter, James, and John up on Mount Hermon to give them a preview of what his coming in glory would be like, with him shining in splendor and majesty. And then after that, Jesus had dramatically healed a demon-possessed boy, seemingly in or around Caesarea Philippi. And now we see him and the 12 heading back towards Capernaum, but not in an open way. Mark said that he didn't want anyone to know that he was headed back home. Now, why is that? Remember, Jesus no longer had any interest in doing ministry in Galilee. We've seen how that shift happened back in episodes 78 and 79. But he does have family back there, so I believe he's going back to be with them and not to do ministry. Now, we have to remember, it hasn't been that long since Jesus first predicted his suffering to the 12 on the road to Caesarea Philippi. So now again, while they were on the road back to Galilee, Jesus stops and he gets serious with them, and he tells them once again about his coming death and resurrection. Take a look at what Luke says here. "And all were astonished at the majesty of God. But while they were all marveling at everything he was doing, Jesus said to his disciples, 'Let these words sink into your ears. The Son of Man is about to be delivered into the hands of men.'" This is so profound. Just after the healing of the boy, the crowds are all marveling and they're saying, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." And Jesus gets all serious and tells his disciples, "Guys, don't get caught up in the hype right now. I'm going to die. Let these words sink down into your ears." Clearly, the season is changing here. Imagine what the 12 must have been feeling at this moment. Jesus has now predicted his death twice in such a short span of time. You think that they might have been feeling confusion or shock or even anger, but their lack of understanding of what Jesus was saying really became evident in what happened next. The journey back to Capernaum was not a quiet one. Mark said that the disciples were having a heated argument about who the greatest was. Think about what had just happened and why there would really be such an argument between them. Peter, James, and John had gone off with Jesus to this special mountain trip, and when they came back, they didn't even tell the other 9 what had happened. Think about how trying this must have been like, or what it must have been to be one of the other 9. Because many times, Peter, James, and John are the only ones that are chosen to go places with Jesus. That would have been so hard relationally, and to still have unity amongst the whole group would have been pretty difficult. So now back in Capernaum, Jesus asked them what they were talking about on the road, and they're all silent. But Jesus knew. Check out what he says in Mark 9. "And he sat down and called the 12. And he said to them, 'If anyone would be first, he must be last of all and servant of all.' And he took a child and put him in the midst of them. And taking him in his arms, he said to them, 'Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives not me, but him who sent me.'" Jesus brings us into his heart with these words. He's not in a random field somewhere. He's back in Capernaum, and he's probably either in the house of his family or in Peter's house. Really, those are the only houses we see him in most often when he's in Capernaum. So if that's the case, this child that he picks up is not just a random child running around, but it's likely his nephew or niece, or perhaps Peter's daughter or son. Now just picture this. Jesus comes into the house and a child runs up to him yelling, "Hey, Uncle Jesus!" And then he just scoops him up and holds him in his arms. This is the God of Genesis 1 in human flesh, and he has nephews and nieces. How precious is this? Of course, we don't know the exact details, but all three of the Synoptic Gospels make mention of this scene. What's the main message that Jesus is communicating to his disciples here? That leadership is about servanthood. We mostly think that leader equals better, but that's a completely unbiblical relationship. Leaders are often entrusted with more responsibility. That doesn't mean at all that they're better. What is better, according to Jesus, is humility and servanthood. What matters to Jesus is that we become like him in servanthood. The idol of platform ministry, really here in the West, it's so prevalent. We think that when we're the leader of something big and important one day, then we're finally made it. We finally think we're awesome in that moment. And that's been so ingrained in the ministry mentality here in the West, and yet it has nothing to do with Jesus' heart, just as he makes clear to the disciples here. Matthew and Mark go on to list some teachings that Jesus gives. Now, these are often viewed entirely outside of the context, but it seems like they're specifically for the disciples as they're within the house in Capernaum. What Jesus actually says and the severity with which he speaks makes far more sense when we see what just happened back on the road. The first thing that we see is in Mark 9 and in Luke 9, where John tells Jesus that someone is casting out demons in his name, and yet they aren't part of the group of disciples. Jesus responds with an exhortation to humility and unity. The next thing we see is Jesus teaching about stumbling blocks and issues of sin and how to prevent it from causing division among fellow believers and being at peace with one another. Thirdly, we see Jesus instructing the disciples on how to deal with a brother who does sin. And then fourthly, we see Jesus giving a parable about a master and an unforgiving servant. Everything in this teaching sequence is bound together by the themes of humility, unity, forgiveness, and how to deal with a brother when there's offense. Again, in context, the reason why Jesus taught these crazy things and gave his disciples these intense warnings about unforgiveness and envy and offense is because in the next 6 months leading up to his death, the pressure on the 12 would mount from both the outside and from the inside. Jesus was so intense. It's in this context that we see the verse, if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off, and if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. Jesus isn't talking about immorality here, though maybe there is application of that in another context. He's talking about unforgiveness and envy and offense. He's talking about interpersonal relationships. He's saying that offense and envy can put you in Gehenna. Again, Jesus is trying to prepare the 12 for the dissension and the division in the time ahead. I don't have time to go through all the details here, but I would encourage you to go back and read Matthew 17 and 18 as well as Mark 9. Remember everything that's just happened and feel the weight of what Jesus is saying in context. So once again, Jesus is back home in Capernaum, likely spending time with his family. He knows what's awaiting him in Jerusalem, less than 7 or 8 months away, and so we can probably picture him spending time with his mother and his brothers and his friends. How much care did he express for them during this time, as they were completely unaware of what awaited him? John 7 shows us that his own 4 brothers didn't understand what Jesus was doing and didn't understand what his mission was. As the Feast of Tabernacles was drawing near, they tried to convince him to go to Jerusalem to show off his power. Take a look at what they say. Now the Jews' Feast of Booths was at hand. So his brothers said to him, "Leave here and go to Judea, that your disciples also may see the works you are doing. For no one works in secret if he seeks to be known openly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world." For not even his brothers believed in him. Remember the context here. Jesus had turned everyone away in the synagogue in Capernaum with the "eat my flesh, drink my blood" sermon, which was so unbelievably offensive to them. He's not so much a popular figure anymore, at least up in Capernaum. And his brothers say, "Hey Jesus, why don't you go south to Judea and do all your stuff there? Maybe they'll believe in you." Now, we can't forget the chronology that we've looked at here. It's probably somewhere nearing the end of 28, and it's been over a year since Jesus had been in Jerusalem, back at the Feast of Wood Offering in August of 27. We see that in John 5, and we looked at that back in episode 55. Remember, he didn't go to the Passover in April of 28. So the last time he was in Jerusalem, his Galilean ministry had not even begun yet. There's so much that's happened since then. All the miracles, people being raised from the dead, the miraculous feedings. So his brothers are referring to these miracles and saying, "Jesus, if you go to Jerusalem and do your big stuff, Maybe they'll believe in you. Yet John says that even Jesus' brothers didn't believe in him. But that would not always be the case, because we can look forward to the book of Acts or to the early church, where we see in history that all of them came to believe that their very brother was both their God and their promised Messiah. What was it like for James to have his own brother appear to him after the resurrection? Oh, I wish I could have been there for that moment. Well, it's with these events that Jesus' Galilean ministry comes to a complete close. Though he would return back up here just briefly before his death, the official appeal to the northern part of Israel was over. From this point forward, Jesus would head south as his face was set resolutely towards Jerusalem. The time was short, the window of opportunity to bear the fruits of repentance was closing, and Jesus would soon fulfill the mission for which he came. In the next episode, we'll begin journeying towards Judea and Jerusalem with Jesus. So if you've missed any of the past episodes in this series, you can find them all on my website, www.joshuahawkins.com/gospels. God bless. I'll see you next time.